G'day, and welcome to another World of Warcraft video. So basically in this video I thought I'd talk about professions and essentially which profession should you choose based on what kind of character you've gone with, if you're a new player to the game, if you're looking to making gold, and also just in general, basically how do professions work in Dragonflight. So depending on how long the video takes, I might make it into two parts to make it easily digestible and make the first part be about which professions you should take, and then the second part be about which or how professions work basically in Dragonflight. So let's imagine you're a new character. As you can see here, I'm a new character, and I have no professions. Okay, so I've got nothing. I haven't chosen anything. I haven't done any professions whatsoever, and I now arrive in Dragonflight in the Dragon Isles. So there's a couple things to start off with that you need to understand. So firstly, when you go to professions, professions are broken down into 5 of them. So you have cooking, fishing, and archaeology. These are sub-professions. These are not mandatory, I want to say. They assist you. So cooking is great because it allows you to create feasts. Feasts will give certain buffs to your team. You can also create food for yourself if you're a spellcaster that isn't a mage who makes their own food. But if you're a spellcaster who's looking to maybe make some, food to sustain their mana or their regeneration while they're out questing. Same as if you're a fighter or a DPS dealer that needs to regain their health. Then you have fishing. Fishing, in a way, is kind of conjunction with cooking. You are able to procure fish that can be used for cooking to the major extent. Is pretty much where it lies. There's also a couple other little things. There's a lot of reputational grinds and mounts that are tied to fishing distinctly, which you can do and which are helpful. But that is the main goal of fishing, is to acquire fish. It's a very simple process, so we'll run through it, but yeah. And then archaeology, basically it's kind of like a soft profession. I think they look to rework it every now and then, but essentially it's for collection of mounts and some transmog. If even. It's a very, very in a strange place. It's generally tied to lore. You can learn a little bit about lore through the quest lines, but it's not anything major. You have your 2 profession slots, so your first profession and your second profession. These are the most important areas, I want to say, because these are where you're going to essentially pick which professions you want. Okay, and we'll go take a look at the professions now, but when you land onto the Dragon Isles, thank you, game, perfect timing, you actually will have the ability to pick up your fishing quest immediately. So we'll just equip a mount quickly. There we go. So now new players won't have the dragon mount just yet. You'll have to do the intro quest lines, which will start here. So you have to go here. You will have to do the intro quest lines. You can complete those, take those. It's very, very good for you. I do suggest doing it. But over here, you will actually find the fishing trainer. And you can actually train yourself in Dragon Isles fishing, which is great. If you have fishing already, she will have this exclamation mark on her. If you do not have fishing already, she will not have the exclamation mark on her. So, but she is here. You can just train in this straight away. It will cost you 100 gold, which for most players is not a lot right now. So that's kind of the just the beginning area. You will do the intro quests, which is very, very understandable. Yeah, I think most players will understand that. And then obviously, you will do these intros and you will land here. Okay, at the Wingcrest Embassy. Now, the Wingcrest Embassy is kind of the little starting hub. It's not really like a full-on hub, but it's the first place where you have access to professions. So let's talk about which professions you should choose. Okay, so professions are going to be based firstly, or what I like to base them on, is whether I want to make money, whether I want to make items for my class, or specifically for my account. Okay, and those items can be gear, or they can be consumables. Consumables are items that a lot of players will need to run high-level raids. They're buffs, potions, tonics, things like that that can give additional buffs to classes. It's not necessarily needed during questing content. A lot of people won't see the value of that during the questing content, but generally speaking, you actually do use it a lot during the process of high-level gameplay. And it usually coincides with creating money. But first, let's talk about the difference between a gathering profession and a production profession. So, when we talk gathering professions, we talk specifically about the professions of mining, skinning, and herbalism. So this is the blacksmith trainer. Ignore that. Ignore that. Ignore that. This is the mining trainer. If I talk to the mining trainer, it will enable me the ability to gather ore, and you'll see it mentioned here. It's for use in engineering, blacksmithing, and jewel crafting. Okay, and if you were to train in here, you would have the ability to mine ores, which is obviously something that's very, very helpful. Similarly, the skinning trainer as well, over here, gives us the ability to train in skinning animals. And then finally, the final trainer, which is the herbalism trainer, gives us the ability to gather plants. Okay, or flowers, bushes, herbs from around the world. Now, there's a distinct difference between herbalism and mining and slaying of animals. So, firstly, mining and herbalism, you gain XP by gathering the nodes. So, that is one additional bonus from them. Whereas skinning, the XP is already rewarded from the mob kill. However, skinning is a lot easier to do than mining and herbalism, because skinning in general, you are constantly killing creatures for questing. So the chances of you having creatures that you can access for skinning is generally quite high. So those are kind of the differences between them. A lot of people won't understand why skinning doesn't give XP, because you've already gained EXP from the kill, but skinning is a bit easier to do. Now, skinning coincides, as it'll mention to you, and you'll see it here, which is great, will coincide mainly with leatherworking. It's pretty much predominantly leatherworking. Some leatherworking mats will be used in other professions, but not so much. Same as herbalism is mainly used in the acts of inscription and in alchemy, as you can see there, but it's not necessarily used in other professions. And then finally, mining is the one that's used across the most professions, being jewel crafting, blacksmithing, and obviously as well with engineering. So depending on your second profession is generally going to determine what you choose for your gathering profession. Now, it's important to understand that you do not need to take a production profession. If you wish to just gather materials to sell on the auction house, you may take two gathering professions. A lot of players who do not wish to partake in the crafting professions, a great way to make money is to just gather materials. You can do them while you're flying around, while you're moving from place to place. I know a lot of people that run dual gathering alts, and those alts will even just service materials to the other characters on their accounts. So there's no necessity for you to take a double production profession. But if you are going to take a production profession, or you are going to take a gathering profession, generally consider how those two coincide. Okay, it's very, very important. And as mentioned, the game kind of tells you which ones, but skinning is for leatherworking, mining is for blacksmithing, engineering, and jewel crafting, and herbalism is for inscription and alchemy. And to cover all of the production professions, before we go and look at their individual trainers, but you can find the majority of them around this starting zone. So you have blacksmithing, okay, which is obviously taught by the blacksmith. Then you have leatherworking, which is taught by the skinning trainer. Then you also have the inside this little kind of cabinet here, you have this little hut. You have the alchemy trainer, which is obviously super important. Then you have the inscription trainer, okay, and then you have the cooking trainer. Remember, this is a side profession, so just take it very straightforward. And then across the pond here, we have the other professions as well. So on the back end here, we have the other professions, and you've got jewelcrafting, and you have your tailoring and your enchanting trainer. Okay, and that pretty much covers everyone essentially. So your major production professions are alchemy, blacksmithing, enchanting, engineering, inscription, jewelcrafting, leatherworking, and tailoring. Now, if you have not chosen a profession, so if you're like me, it's not so much of a problem to shift across from profession to profession. If you're someone who's been doing professions before in a previous expansion, obviously then this is going to be a little bit of a more difficult decision. If maybe you're now deciding to get into it, resetting your professions will change how you function across. But before we pick all that, so now we know a little bit about the profession, but before we pick all that, as I said before, we have to decide whether we want to make money or whether we want to be a gear producer, if we're producing gear for ourselves. So if we want to make money, if we want to do the process of money, then generally what I would say is you want to work on either just gathering. As I mentioned before, gathering is the easiest passive way to make money. Lots of people are always looking for mats and you can sell them, or alternatively look at the skinning, or sorry, not skinning, the alchemy profession and the jewel crafting profession. The reasons why I say the alchemy profession requires you to create tonics and elixirs. Those tonics and elixirs can produce some high quality materials that people use in raiding, which is generally the costliest section. It will require you to really get into alchemy, but it is one of the highest producers of income. Or alternatively, as I mentioned before, you can look at jewel crafting. Again, the reason being is socketed gems are worth a fair amount of money and they're frequently replaced. So there's always a decent open market for it, as people are always upgrading their gear and thus always needing to replace the gems that they socket into their gear. Otherwise, tailoring is a great way to make money. The selling of bags is also very, very good. But base your profession based on what product you're going to sell, but you also need to base it depending on how far you're going to go into that line. Tailoring is very easy to make money. Bags are very low on the tier level of equipment that you make, whereas alchemy, you can make huge money, but it requires you to go a bit higher. So think about that. Gathering, as I said, is just the best passive. But let's work on the principle that you as a character may want to make stuff for yourself. You know, your end goal is to make things for yourself. So again, it goes down to synergy between the professions. So firstly, most characters, if they are your first character or a character that you main, you're probably going to want to choose both a gathering and a production-based profession. So when you look at the ones that go hand in hand, it's very straightforward. You choose herbalism if you want to go to alchemy and inscription. You're going to want to choose gathering if you want to go for blacksmithing, jewel crafting, and engineering. And you're going to want to choose, obviously, skinning if you want to go leatherworking. There are ones that do not require you to go for a gathering profession. Those ones are tailoring and enchanting. Enchanting gains its materials by breaking down items that you receive from dungeon rewards, pickups, etc. And tailoring, you get cloth materials from enemies that you defeat. You do not have to farm them using a gathering profession. So those two, you don't need to take a gathering. That's why generally tailoring and enchanting are taken hand in hand, as those are some very good professions that work hand in hand. If you're looking to make gear for yourself, understand that in Dragonflight, all the classes can kind of make pieces for every other class. I think it's a way that they prevented like blacksmithers only being able to make plate. If, for example, I come here to the tailoring profession trainer and I learn tailoring, there we go, and I learn tailoring, and I go to my profession screen, you can see that if I look at the garments that I can make cloth garments mainly as my, kind of, abilities, etc. But I can make cloaks, and cloaks are obviously shared across all the classes. So although I make mainly cloth items, which is understandable, I can make cloaks which are shared across classes. Similarly, if I also take the enchanting, we're just going to learn enchanting quickly. Enchanting is not related to gear, so I'm not taking enchanting for gear. I'm actually taking enchanting to create things that improve my overall stats. And enchantments can be run on gear, they help improve your stats, but enchanters can also make wands and staffs. So you don't need to worry. Whatever class or whatever profession you choose, I should say, generally has some kind of gear they can make. But understand that obviously if you are a blacksmith and you choose enchanting, you're going to be able to make wands. You're not going to be able to make too much else. So it's obviously a bit of an understanding of your class lore and how your class works. But yes, generally speaking, I wouldn't suggest that you go and obviously start doing enchanting as a warrior or a paladin or something like that, So just be aware of that. So in terms of professions, can you change them? Yes, you can. So leatherworking, for example, if I want to train in leatherworking, you can see here, I can't currently train it. That is because my professions here are filled up. However, if I click this button here, I can unlearn it. It will give me this warning. The reason being is, as you can see, do you want to unlearn enchanting and lose all associated recipes? If you unlearn, you lose your recipes. So if you have any rare recipes, you're going to have to regain them. So we're going to unlearn, and we've done, and we're going to unlearn, and we're done. What we're going to do now is we're just going to quickly swing through every profession to see what they can make so that you know which one to choose. We're not going to do the gathering professions. The reason being the gathering professions, as described before, are solely for getting materials, and I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So if we look at leatherworking, let me just open up leatherworking. So leatherworking, as one can imagine, allows you to make leather armor, but it's not just leather armor, it is also mail armor as well. So you can see here that they can make leather, they can also make mail, which is obviously great. You can make tons, you can make cuffs, helmets, pauldrons, treads, boots, quite a lot. And obviously it's super duper helpful to do so, so that is super helpful. They can also make profession equipment, which helps for alchemy. A lot of the professions in Dragonflight, which we'll cover in a second video, have this kind of crossover between which profession equipment they can make to create usability. But they can make a variety of accessories, obviously mainly for skinning, but also for herbalism, alchemy, etc. They can also make some crossbows as well. So that is leatherworking in a rough place. There are what they call bestial patterns. These are the upgraded recipes, I want to say, but these are also the PvP versions of gear. And then you get decayed patterns as well, which are also certain different types of patterns that you use to create certain types of gear. This is more complex, and we'll talk about this in terms of the Dragonflight or how to progress your professions. But if you want to make leather or mail gear, take leatherworking, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Then if we come across and we look at, for example, Inscription. So Inscription is changed quite a bit. It used to be a It used to be a profession that essentially was used for glyphs, but glyphs fell out of the way. So Inscription, what you can make with Inscription is pretty interesting. So firstly, you can make missives. So missives are ways to create certain stats that you want on gear, which are obviously really, really good, and allow you to control the stats that you have on gear. So that's very important, especially when people want to get into high-level crafting. Certain classes favor certain secondary stats, and so this is very important for that. And then you get the Dark Moon deck box, which is a trinket that they can make. So they can craft the trinket. They can also make some weapons for the more spellcaster orientated classes. So they can make things like staffs, as you can see there. They can also make some offhands as well, which are obviously very, very good. So that's generally speaking kind of where it goes. Like that's pretty much about it, if I'm honest. There's some fun things like scrolls and that they can make, again, profession equipments that they can craft. But generally speaking, there's not too much open. There's some toys, there's some other sort of things that you can make, but generally speaking, it's not too crazy. Something important for money is contracts. So these contracts allow you to gain reputation while doing other world quests for certain factions. So these do matter quite a bit. So that's Inscription. Generally speaking, it's going to be the trinkets, the staffs, but mainly the misses for controlling of secondary stats, and it's going to be for the overarching kind of control of contracts and things like that. Then we come to Alchemy. Alchemy, as I mentioned before, one of the better ones to make money. The main reason being is you can make these high, powerful potions. So you'll see there's a lot of potions, but as you can see here, so here, straight away, creates a cauldron that raid members can use to exchange 5 primal chaos for 5 fleeting elemental potions of ultimate power. When consumed, their primary stat is increased by 669 for 30 seconds. 669 is a fair chunk amount of primary stat power. But these are cauldrons. Then you also get the elemental powers of potions of ultimate power that you can make. You get files of charged isolation, which is also pretty good for certain tanks and things like that. There's a lot of potions that are very strong. I don't want to go too in depth into it because it's obviously something maybe to focus on if I do an alchemy video. But yeah, basically there's a whole bunch of additional benefits that can happen, and they're very good for raiding, and that's generally why you'll find people use alchemy, is obviously for the ability to assist in raids, and that's why it is one of the ones that makes the most money. So obviously that's that kind of covers those. Then you look at blacksmithing. Blacksmithing, similar to leatherworking, should be fairly straightforward. It's not really something you shouldn't or you should be too concerned about. So blacksmithing as a profession very obviously reciprocates leatherworking. You can make a whole bunch of armor, plate armor, generally speaking, very similar to leatherworking. You can make shields and you can make weapons. Big value being in weapons. A lot of melee classes get their weapons from blacksmiths. So being able to make fist weapons, pole arms, long swords, great swords, axes. So many classes use these. These are your big money items. As obviously buying a weapon is a huge source of damage upgrade for many classes. So that's a big thing. But also just being able to create plate items is also something that's very, very valuable as well. So that's obviously blacksmithing, as I mentioned before, super duper simplistic in its nature, so nothing too crazy. And then you get jewelcrafting, which is obviously kind of a sister profession to this. They both use mining. And jewelcrafting, as I mentioned before, creates gems, mainly gems. So these are gems that will give additional stats. So that's kind of their big item. Obviously, depending on the rarity of the gem, depends on the stats that it gives. But these gems are quite big. They don't give huge stat upgrades, but for most classes, a couple gems can really be the big difference between what's doing a couple percent of damage, which matters a lot at end game rating. And they also make trinkets as well. So they also create trinkets, which is obviously great. Yeah, fantastic for most people. And they make jewelry, which is neck pieces and rings as well. So very, very obvious there. There's also some side things, again, some toys, some novelty items, etc. But these are less prominent, although they can make you a fair amount of money for those collection based people. Then we have enchanting and tailoring and engineering, which are our final three. So we'll just unlearn. So we have enchanting, which obviously we briefly learnt before. Then we have tailoring. These two go hand in hand very well, just generally because neither of them require a crafting profession, which is why I like them. But yeah, these tailoring again we'll just learn cloth, which is pretty straightforward, and enchanting you can learn obviously the ability to improve gear. And as we mentioned before, they've got their rods and their wands. We've already covered those. And then finally, you've got the engineering, and engineering is a pretty straightforward one. It's the final one, I believe. We've covered inscription, we've covered jewelcrafting, leatherworking. Yeah, that's everything. Alchemy, yeah. So engineering is the final one. Engineering is more can create some useful tools as well, which is obviously something a lot of players will appreciate. But also engineering's main focus being in that you can create kind of these like usable, some of them are like usable for open world PvP, some of them are usable. They're a bit of a strange place. A lot of them are also more toys. They can make binoculars or headpieces for most classes. They can also make braces as well, which is somewhat nice for leather workers, plate, cloth, etc. But generally speaking, guns are their main thing, and enchantment buffs for those kind of mechanical weapons that they make. Like they make this gun, which is great. It's a very high level gun, but then they also make scopes and ammo, which are kind of enchantments for gun-based weaponry as well. They also make a whole bunch of explosives and things like that. Engineering is a bit of a strange profession, and it's something that's really a lot of fun to get into, but it's also one of those ones that's very difficult to explain to players. So if you are looking to doing engineering, rather look at going more the route of I want to do it for the goggles, and I want to do it for the braces. Maybe you want to do it to create some guns, but that's generally where I would say it is. But there's a lot of decent finishing reagents and things like that that you can also get. But yeah, generally speaking, that's it. So obviously, I'm not going to cover how to progress in Dragonflight here, but yeah, generally, that's how you choose a profession. And sorry it was such a long video. I hope it helps though. And of course, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. So until then, take care, stay safe, and bye.